Incoming obvious statement. Scary games have scary missions. We all know this, but sometimes a mission idea doesn't make it back in a sequel. And the real question is it because they're too frightening? Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, let's talk about 10 missions so scary they never returned. Starting off at number 10, it's Resident Evil 7's guest house and testing area. In many ways, Resident Evil 7 was a reinvention of the famous horror franchise that tried out a lot of new ideas. Some stuck, like the first-person view, and some didn't. Going back to this game after Village, I'm struck by just how much of an old-school grindhouse horror tone they went for with this one.
What are you hiding from? What don't you want me to know?
There is a lot more expected horror trappings here than in pretty much any other game of the series. For me at least, one of the scariest ideas the game introduced was the way it incorporated found footage every so often. Like in the opening guest house, you find a tape of some poor soul who ended up trapped in the Baker house, who met a gruesome end. Instead of just watching these tapes, you relive them though, and while they're mostly scripted and the outcome's inevitable, they do give the game this impressive atmosphere of death that isn't in any other game in the series. The third area of the game, the testing area, controlled by Lucas, is especially unique. In it, you have to solve a sadistic saw-like trap, but the only way to learn what you're actually supposed to do is to watch a tape of a previous victim try and fail. It's a creepy sequence that's just plain unique for this game. Sure, later games have a lot of creepy moments, but they don't do things quite the same way. And number 9 is Dead Space 2's return to the Ishimura. Might sound like a bit of a contradiction, but I mean, we're talking about scary mission ideas that never got revisited, and this is literally about you revisiting the ship from Dead Space 1 in Dead Space 2. But it's not the location that makes it unusual, it's the pacing and atmosphere. When you first see the Ishimura again and find out you have to go back, it's obvious that some bad stuff is going to go down when you go in it. Dead Space 2 pulls a really interesting trick here. You go through the airlock expecting the worst, and nothing happens. No monster goop, no ambushes, no jump scares, nothing. That's when the tension goes through the roof. The anticipation is just brutal. You know that eventually this place is going to get flooded with necromorphs, but the devs really lay it in, and it takes a long time before anything hostile actually shows up. What makes this mission so different is the absence of monsters. The Dead Space game's usually pretty consistent about throwing enemies your way, but here it feels like half the level goes by before anything attacks. I mean, when they do come, it's brutal, but Dead Space 2 is generally regarded as less scary than the first game, but it's arguably got the freakiest part in the entire franchise in it with the return to Ishimura. And number 8 is Batman Arkham Asylum, the Killer Croc Slayer. Near the end of the now legendary first game in the Arkham series, you're forced to go to the lair of the Killer Croc, a gigantic half-man, half-crocodile monster who lives in the sealed-off sewers beneath Arkham Asylum. You'd think in a game with Scarecrow that he'd be the center of attention here.
You're in my world now.
But no, it's Killer Croc, and all for this single sequence. How it works is you have to walk across these flimsy wooden platforms and get all these plants to complete an anti-venom, all while Killer Croc stalks you underwater. You have to move slow to avoid getting his attention, and the whole time you're looking around just waiting for this big monster to pop up. It's like being trapped in a sewer with a great white shark, and probably about as freaky. When he does come barreling at you out of nowhere, it's so easy to panic. Sometimes he attacks from behind, sometimes he tries to get you from underwater. There's a lot to keep track of, but if you start running, you're dead. There's no other sequence in the Arkham series as tense as this one. I mean, there's definitely some creepy sequences in the sequels, but nothing quite as visceral and intense as this one. And number 7 is Dying Light's Airdrop. Overall, Dying Light 1's a scarier game than the sequel, which seems to be by design. There's a few intense chase sequences in the second game, but nothing comes close to the terror of the mission Airdrop, otherwise known as the first time you really get to experience night in Haran. When you're talking about scares in Dying Light, you gotta talk about the moment where you first see a volatile, the super powerful zombies that come out at night. It's just a perfectly paced scene where you hide behind the fence, you get a glimpse at the thing before it spots you, and that's when you gotta make a run for it in the pitch black city streets, which are swarming with zombies as it is. No other horror game has night quite like Dying Light, like it's almost pitch black, and having your flashlight on only makes it easier for the volatiles to spot you, so it's kind of terrifying and you're forced to sneak around in almost complete darkness. The sequel doesn't even come close to anything as scary as this mission. Night is just so much less scary in the sequel. You don't have to worry about volatiles, and it's pretty easy to see. It's standard video game night, like basically the opposite of what the first game was trying to do. At number 6 is Tomb Raider 2013's Thrall Pit. The recently rebooted, and recently, kind of using the word loosely, but the recently rebooted Tomb Raider trilogy was generally more hardcore than the previous games, but the first game was especially rough. They really made use of that M rating, and I'm not just talking about all the violent ways that Lara could meet her end. The standout horror sequence has got to be when you get to the cult headquarters and fall down to this nightmarish area called the Thrall Pit.
I can't see the body. I don't think she survived the war.
First, Lara has to wade through a waist-high pool of blood and gore before entering a disgusting prison filled with insane cannibals. At this point, you lost most of your weapons. All you have is a bow and arrow, and the place is dark and confusing, and it's wall-to-wall filled with stinking corpses. Like, it's a disgusting area that's just so much more horrific than anything else in the game, really anything else in the series. Later games keep the spooky elements, but nothing just straight up as gross and horror-like as this area. At number 5 is Banjo-Kazooie, Clanker's Cavern. So, looking back on it, the first Banjo-Kazooie could be kind of a creepy game at times. They really misled you with the aesthetic of this game. Like, Rare was like, it's a cute bear and a bird. This is a kid's game. And really, compared to everything else on this list, this is kid stuff, but that's kind of the stuff that sticks with people the most, especially if you're actually a kid when you see it. For a lot of people, this one area in the game gave them nightmares, and it wasn't the haunted house, it was Clanker's Cavern. When you first get there, it doesn't seem that special. It's basically just a big open sewer, but the thing that really freaks people out is the titular character, this giant robot whale called Clanker. It's got bloodshot eyes, its rusty exterior is strange as hell, but it's the inside that really gets to people. For some reason, it's half machine, half organic. It's got fleshy red walls and what looks like blood on the inside. Genuinely looks like something out of Silent Hill, which is really, really bizarre to have in a kid's game. Nothing else in the sequels even comes close to being as freaky as that. Maybe parents complained, or maybe Rare just realized, hey, you know what? That was really weird of us to do. What were we thinking? We were making a game for kids, and we were making a techno-organic scary mess. So they lightened things up in the later games quite a bit. I mean, the games kind of matched the cartoon bear and bird that is on the cover of it. And number 4 is Condemned, the Apple Orchard. The original Condemned has plenty of scary moments. It's one of the best horror games on the Xbox 360, but the stuff that really stands out, in my mind, is the Appleseed Orchard, the final level of the game. This is the place where the guy you've been hunting, this lunatic who hunts and kills other serial killers as part of some bizarre ritual, this is where he's hiding. What makes this place stand out is the tension. You gotta fully explore this house, following bizarre clues in order to find this guy. Eventually, you start getting swarmed by crazed vagrants who always seem to attack at the worst times. Everything about this level is just really well done. The slow build-up as you explore the house, the terrifying basement, the whole sequence where you find the killer who was tortured so badly that he kills himself. It's some grim and creepy stuff. The sequel's got plenty of scares too, but nothing quite like the Apple Orchard. The second game goes a lot crazier, a lot faster, but I think the mysterious first game has a better atmosphere and an overall much creepier tone. At number 3 is the Evil Within Ruvik's mission. Chapter 9, though regarded as the best level in the game, is notorious for the fact that it's the chapter where Ruvik actively hunts the player down. Though Ruvik is slow, any contact with him is instant death, and his AI is smart enough to teleport instantly towards you depending on the occasion. Worst part, his encounters are completely randomized, so there's no indication when or where he's going to appear outside of the screen turning blue and the background music changing. While most generally agree that Evil Within 2 is the better game, the first game has the scariest mission. This is also a really frustrating mission. You've got this big mansion to explore, and Ruvik is hunting you, the main bad guy of the game. He can randomly appear, like I said, and if he does, you just gotta hide, or, instant death. He makes this whole area incredibly tense, and to make matters worse, there's no auto-saving. If you want to keep your progress, you gotta get back to the save room in the lobby, and that's also the only place you're safe. The fact that his appearances are randomized, though, is what makes this so different compared to the other Stalker sections in both of the Evil Within games. This game, because of those two elements, make this feel like something out of Amnesia or something. It's different, it's scary as hell, and it's an idea that never returned for the otherwise improved sequel. At number 2 is Uncharted Drake's Fortune, The Bunker. The Uncharted series is obviously inspired by the likes of Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider, but the first game also had a touch of survival horror that the sequels didn't return to. The level that stands out is really The Bunker, the one where Drake has to fight his way out of an old German bunker built on the island that it's infested with, I guess, zombies. They never really address it, but what else are you going to call these things? Ammo is super limited, the place is dark, and they just come crawling out of the walls. The environment is nothing like the rest of the games. The Uncharted games usually set in these beautiful forest or ancient temple type areas, but this is just a miserable gray bunker. The music and atmosphere super tense, and there's no buddies around for Drake to wisecrack with. Also, the enemies are just way more monstrous than anything else in the rest of the series. The second game has these mystical warriors, and the third game didn't actually have any supernatural enemies. They were just illusions, but these guys are just 100% mindless, murderous monsters. Basically undead Spaniards. And that's not like an ethnic thing, it's just that they're Spaniards and they're zombies. No other level in the Uncharted series goes quite as hard as this one. I guess with Last of Us, they didn't need to put survival horror in Uncharted anymore, because there's clearly just nothing else in the series like this mission. And finally, at number 1, it's Hunted in Doom. It's weird to think about now, but back when the first Doom came out, it was supposed to be kind of scary. It was supposed to be a demonic riff on aliens, but the sequel began slowly but surely shifting that focus, and the series is mostly known just for action at this point. It took a little diversion back into horror again with Doom 3, but we don't need to talk a whole lot about Doom 3. There was nothing particularly scary in the first Doom either, at least not the original release. The map I'm talking about here, Hunted, is actually map 11 of the Plutonia experiment, one of 2 mission packs bundled with Final Doom, which came out after Doom 2, which is kind of confusing, but it's all officially released, so whatever. There's 2 things that make this map so terrifying, especially when you're a kid. For one, it's the music. It uses the weird, distorted nursery rhyme music from the Doom ending. And second, it's a maze, and it's filled with nothing but archviles. If you're unaware, archviles are these nasty dudes who attack you by filling your screen with fire. You can't see anything, they're surprisingly tough, and the design of the level is filled with cheap tricks, so they get you by surprise. Even as somebody who's played this game literally pretty much their entire life, like there are significantly more years in my life after Doom than before, this map still puts me on edge though. There's nothing quite like it in the entire franchise, at least nothing official. This one mission is the only time the Doom franchise went full horror, and it's an idea that's just never come up again. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on GameRanx.